They may not have a nickname like the Legion of Boom yet, but the Seahawks have special things going on defense. And it isn't just the stars making it happen. We're going to be breaking down Seattle's defensive brotherhood coming out of a Monday night win over the Texans here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, reporting live from the VMAC. You're listening to Locked On Seahawks. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s tuning in after a big Monday night win for the Seahawks, whether you are in Port O'Connor, Texas, or Huntington, West Virginia. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. The Seahawks moving to 5-2 last night, a late night thriller in the Pacific Northwest as Seattle wins 27-19 over Houston. We're going to be taking a close look at a number of topics coming out of that game, including one of Seattle's rookies coming up big and living up to the hype, and some potential awards that the Seahawks have, a couple defenders that are going to be vying for here after 7 games. Jam-packed episode coming your way, courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Seattle's defense, historically, they've had some really good ones. We know the vaunted Legion of Boom, but right now, Mike Macdonald's got something special cooking with this unit right now, even with the injuries that the Seahawks have dealt with, holding the Texans to just 12 points, 2 for 15 on third down, 3.7 yards per play, barely 2 yards per rush from their running backs. You name it, it was an utterly dominant performance from Seattle's defense last night. And I asked Leonard Williams after the game what he thinks about where this defense is at right now and the ability to take the next man up mentality and apply it on the field. Take a listen.
Leo, we've seen several backups step up and play significant snaps to this defense, and then coming up big again today. Takata with a sack and a pass breakup. Drake Thomas stuff in the stat sheet. What can you say about the depth this defense has built and just really been able to bring that next man up to life?
I mean, honestly, I think it just comes down to a mentality that we play with on defense. I was saying it on the sideline to some of the, to Murph and some of the other guys sitting next to me, that this has been like the best defense I've ever been a part of, and it's not because of stats or anything like on paper. It's just like the type of mindset that we have, and it's just like the togetherness, the brotherhood that we have on this defense is really special, and I think that allows the next man up to really take in his position and what he has to do on the defense, because he knows that everyone on the defense has his back.
Yeah, really interesting response there from Leonard Williams for a couple of reasons, Rob. First off, coming out and saying he was telling teammates best defense he has been part of. And obviously, even in New York with teams that weren't consistently winning, the Jets and Giants had some pretty good defenses during the time that he was there. But calling this the best defense he's been a part of, that speaks volumes. And then the togetherness and the brotherhood. That is the word that stuck out to me looking at the game that was played last night, because much to our surprise, Devin Witherspoon, even though he practiced in full twice this past week, he and Julian Love were both out in this game. Derek Hall was out in this game. Seattle was missing plenty of firepower on the defensive side of the football, and they're dealing with these injuries. And yet, aside from a late touchdown given up that basically was a garbage time score for Houston, this was just one of those vintage all-out elite defensive efforts from front to back that Seahawks orchestrated, and they were able to do it with stars as well as role players. And real quick, Rob, I want to talk about those stars, because those are the names that everybody knows, the household names, the Leonard Williams, the Ernest Jones of the world, DeMarcus Lawrence, previously playing for the Dallas Cowboys, Uchenna Nwosu, these established veterans that have been Pro Bowlers or they have played in a bunch of postseason games, and they've got the accolades. on their resume. All of those players showed up and then some last night. Leonard Williams with a huge run stop, had a couple of quarterback hits. DeMarcus Lawrence had a 4th down tackle for loss that led to a turnover on downs. Uchenna Nwosu with that sack that I still contend should have been a safety, but that's beside the point. Had that sack at the beginning of the game. Get to see all these guys getting after Ernest Jones with that remarkable interception when he had fallen down. He was starting to get up, and then he said God was with him as he reached out and plucked that interception. You look at the plays that were made there, the stars absolutely showed up last night.
And they did. I mean, it was Monday Night Football. The lights are shining bright. You expect your stars to stand up, and they absolutely did. But I love the fact that you can make an argument that the 2 most impactful defensive players for the Seahawks were Drake Thomas and Ty Akata. So that, to me, is basically the personification of what Leonard Williams was talking about here, and in terms of it being the best defense he's ever been a part of, it being a brotherhood, that you step up when your family needs you to do exactly that. And obviously, with all of the injuries that the Seahawks have had especially in the secondary, but also at linebacker with Tyrese Knight expected to be very, very effective in his second year with the Seahawks. And instead, Drake Thomas has taken this opportunity and quite literally ran with it. I thought that he was terrific in this particular football game. And so, again, as you said, Corbin, look, you can we can gush all we want about a Leonard Williams, about Uchenna Nwosu, certainly DeMarcus Lawrence, whoever you want. I mean, when you have a defensive performance like the one that the Seahawks had against Houston Texans, coming on the heels, of course, of just a couple of weeks ago against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was statistically about as dominant as you're ever going to see, then yeah, I think that it is a good reason to be excited about a club that is 5-2. Feels like they were just a hair away from being 7-0 at this point. And as they said on the Monday Night Football telecast, this is becoming a legitimate Super Bowl contender, almost like you and I have been preaching that for the last couple of months.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out the 2 unheralded heroes on this defense, because I mentioned all those big plays that the noteworthy stars made. Everyone was involved. Everybody was contributing. Everyone had positive plays. But Drake Thomas and Ty Akata, you're talking about 2 guys that were not starters at the beginning of the season. And for different reasons, they're in the lineup. We know that Ty Akata is not going to be starting when Julian Love comes back. But Drake Thomas, he's not seizing that starting job to Tyrese Knight. He has taken that completely over at the will linebacker spot. And what impressed me most, Rob, about this performance from both of them is they were getting it done in all 3 phases. It wasn't like, well, Ty Akata had a sack and Drake Thomas had a couple of tackles for loss. They were doing it all. Thomas had 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He had 3 pressures, a quarterback hit, and he had 3 pass breakups. Maybe the most impressive one that he had was a wheel route to Woody Marks in the 4th quarter on an extended play where he, stride for stride, was with the running back and made a play on a vertical route when C.J. Stroud had broken the pocket. Those extended plays, a lot of times, running backs on those plays are going to get big plays because the linebackers can't cover him. He was able to do that. Again, he had 3 pass breakups. And then you look at Ty Akata, he had a sack. He had a crucial pass breakup in the red zone, in the end zone, that happened in the 4th quarter on what ended up being a goal line stand that Houston couldn't cash in on at all. That 3rd down play, Xavier Hutchinson has a touchdown. He had beaten Reek Woolen across the field. He was open, and Okada fully extended, came up and swatted that ball down. It was a huge play. And oh, by the way, he was second on the team with 9 tackles in this game as well. Both these guys are getting it done beyond just making a couple decent plays a game. They were game changers yesterday for the Seattle Seahawks, and that is a testament to the foundation and the culture that Mike Macdonald is building right now with the Seattle Seahawks, because these guys are coming in with elite preparation, and the competition that we see on the practice field is turning into opportunities. Mike Macdonald this is not lip service. Like, Drake Thomas has earned these reps, so he's going to play. Like, this truly is a compete for reps situation, and we're seeing it pay major dividends for the Seattle Seahawks.
No question about it. I mean, again, I think it's a testament to the depth that the Seahawks have created here. And then, of course, to the players themselves and just their talent, their work ethic. And then, as you said, to Mike Macdonald, to Adam Durday for putting these players in positions to be as successful as they are. Watching the game on the telecast last night, Corbin, the cameras caught a moment towards the end of the game where Mike Macdonald and Ty Akata were talking with each other. And of course, I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what was said, but it awfully looked a lot like a congratulations from head coach Mike Macdonald to Ty Akata. And you could see Akata kind of look up and, with pride, basically like, coming from you, that means a lot. Kind of a message. And I think that, again, McDonald basically talked about this in a post-game press conference and during today's press conference as well, about just how proud he is of Akata, what a communicator he is. That's something that we hear so much about with Julian Love. For Akata to be making the same type of calls, making the same type of big plays that the Seahawks have grown accustomed to with a Pro Bowler in Julian Love, for a former undrafted free agent, Ty Akata, that some were arguing shouldn't even have been on the roster in the first place, for him to have emerged the way he did, again, on this type of a stage, is one of the biggest reasons why I think that the Seahawks are having the success that they have, because there's an awful lot of teams out there right now that are struggling with injuries and are seeing the losses pile up because of it. The Seahawks feel like they are getting stronger even as their durability issues have risen to the forefront.
And now they get to go into a bye, and they're going to get Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love and Derek Hall back. And it's a good problem they're going to have now, especially with Nick Eamon-Warry emerging in the slot and playing so well in the nickel. Like, McDonald was gushing about it a little bit today. Like, hey, we're going to have to figure this out, like how we can play our guys. And that goes for Ty Akata, and Drake Thomas has won this job. So I think he's good to go. But this is clearly evidence that competition mantra that Pete Carroll had all these years, there were some times where you felt like that was kind of becoming lip service and guys weren't getting opportunities. You're not seeing that right now with Mike Macdonald. He is playing guys that are earning these chances, and I expect you'll still see some snaps for Ty Akata even when Julian Love's back. They're going to find ways to get him some snaps on defense because he has earned those opportunities, and it just shows the depth they've got there. And aside from that blemish against the Bucs, they've won 3 of the 4 games Ty Akata started in. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year Okada's going to start 4 of the first 7 games, I would have thought, man, there's a chance this could potentially go south for Seattle. But they've won 3 of those 4 games, and that tells you all you need to know about the depth and the confidence that this group is playing in this tightly knit brotherhood on defense. When we come back, we've got a lot more to break down coming out of Monday night's win over the Houston Texans. We'll be diving into some offensive takeaways on Tell the Truth Tuesday. That's coming your way up next here on Locked On Seahawks.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So, let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive, and that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda's just like an athlete, focusing on all those details, whether it's metallic accents, hand-stitched Napa leather, You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel, the smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays, and just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks improving to 5-2 last night with a 27-19 victory over the Texans at Lumen Field. And as we do every Tuesday, it's time for Tell the Truth Tuesday, and kind of meshing it with our Monday musing segment that we do because we didn't have a normal Monday show with a Monday night game. Nonetheless, Rob, let's dive into some thoughts coming out of this game on offense. And I know for you, a lot of fans probably were freaking out about this. We finally saw Sam Darnold come back to earth a little bit in this game. He had a couple of turnovers. He certainly made some big plays. It wasn't like he had a terrible game, but this really did show. You scored 27 points against the number one ranked defense, and you did it with 4 turnovers. It showed you that this team can survive if Sam Darnold is not playing at an all-pro MVP level like we've seen him do for a lot of this season.
Yeah, that's the thing. We all know that when the team is victorious, often the quarterback gets so much credit, perhaps too much credit. And when they lose, often the quarterback gets too much of the blame. So I want to kind of pick at Sam Darnold a little bit in obviously a victory, because I do think that that now it's getting so much praise that it's getting a little bit ridiculous. Now, I wouldn't be among those who has argued that Sam Darnold has played so well. The connection and rapport that he has developed with Jackson Smith-Njigba is about as impressive as you're seeing any quarterback with any receiver in all of the league. And I think that his play has been critical to Seattle's success for so far this 5-2 start to the season. That said, if you look at the way that Sam Darnold played in this particular game, you mentioned the 2 turnovers, interception that I thought was just one of his more inaccurate passes so far of this season, and of course a fumble in which I thought he should have got the ball out of his hand quicker, considering where he was on the field, where the Seahawks were on the field. I thought that those were 2 fairly inexcusable turnovers for a quarterback of his experience in a game that was as dominated by defense as this one was. You had to know that this was going to be a football. You had to protect the football. For the Seahawks to be able to emerge victorious, despite the fact that they lost the turnover battle, essentially 4-1 in terms of traditional turnovers. Obviously, there were all those 4th down conversions in which Houston was unable to convert. Those obviously also are turnovers. But for Seattle to basically lose the traditional turnover battle as badly as they did, I thought there was a good chance that this could be another one of those games that Seattle loses at home. Instead, obviously, they wound up victorious. Sam Darnold's going to get plenty of credit from lots of people out there. I want to make sure we kind of keep him level-headed, because there were times I didn't think that his play was as level-headed as it should have been in last night's performance.
Yeah, it definitely was an uneven performance, and there were some questionable decisions that were made, particularly that sack that was stripped, had a strip sack, the fumble in the end zone. That's one, like he said, I got to get the ball out. And it looked like on the All-22, he had opportunities to do that. There were some guys he could have thrown to there. And so a missed opportunity nonetheless. Still had 213 yards passing, 123 to Jackson Smith-Njigba. There were positives. It's not like it was a horrible game by any means. But a player that I want to – look, I feel like this has kind of been beating a dead horse to an extent. Anthony Bradford had a pretty good training camp, and we talked a lot about him winning that right guard job, not getting it by default. And there have been some games this year where I think he's played a lot better than what Pro Football Focus has graded him out as. I mean, he at one point, I think it was after the 4th or 5th game, still had less than 10 pressures allowed. He was in the upper half of the league for guards for pass block efficiency rate. But look, you can't sugarcoat it. He has been awful the last couple of games. He looks like the player that many were calling to be benched last year. It has been a regression back to that previous play. And there's 2 plays that jump out in particular. There was a really bad hold that wiped out a big run that, quite frankly, did not need to happen, but it did. Wiped out one of Ken Walker's longest runs. And then there was another play where he got beat so bad by Tommy, I think it's Tioga, or the former defensive tackle from Ohio State. He got beat so bad that when he turned around trying to recover, he basically tackled Zack Charbonnet, who was trying to pick up the defender. It was an ugly example of how much he is struggling right now, getting beat off the line of scrimmage. We're still seeing the lunging and pass protection. There are things that were supposed to be getting better this year that looked like they were, and now we're seeing, again, a regression here the last couple of weeks. That is still the spot on the offensive line, Rob, that is holding this team back. And that's why there's been discussion. Do you try to go out and get somebody at the deadline like a Wyatt Teller? Do you get Christian Haynes, who it sounds like has a chance to come off injured reserve after the bye week? Do you give him an opportunity to get back in the competition there? That feels like the one spot that is still really holding this offense back in terms of the trenches. And it's unfortunate because it looked like he was turning the corner. The last few weeks, though, maybe you're suggesting that isn't the case.
Well, that's a possibility. Again, you're going up against the best defense in the NFL, at least in terms of statistics entering this football game. Anthony Bradbury certainly has not taken the strides that I was hoping for. At the same time, we're still talking about a young player. I think it's going to be interesting to see if this does indeed become a position where the Seahawks allow Christian Haynes to kind of get back into that mix. If they perhaps even push Oluwatimi back at the center spot and then move Jalen Sandell over to that right guard position. So I do think it's something that bears watching here. And, of course, the Seahawks are going to have some time to kind of make some of these self-scouting decisions with the bye coming up. Since we're talking about offense here for a moment, I also want to kind of shift the focus here for a second on Zack Charbonnet, because I think that similar to Sam Darnold in that Sam Darnold completed a season-low 54.8% of his passes, and again, had the 2 turnovers as we talked about before. I think it'd be really easy to kind of question with Zack Charbonnet. I mean, he, has basically just 205 yards through 7 games so far this season. So again, if you're one of those people from a fantasy football perspective and you're like, oh my goodness, 7 games, 200 yards, then, people are going to say what, they're going to be critical of this. And at the same time, I think if you look at, his numbers over the course of the season, however, 5 touchdowns in 7 games, that there's only 4 backs in all of the NFL who have more than that. There's the guy who I think should be the front runner for Offensive Player of the Year, Jonathan Taylor, of course, the Indianapolis Colts. And then you got Josh Jacobs with 8, Javonte Williams with 6, and Jahmyr Gibbs with 6. All established stars, not kind of playing the second fiddle role that Zack Charbonnet is playing for the Seahawks. So I think that, again, Zack Charbonnet's job is to be kind of that punisher, that finisher, and he is excelling in exactly that role.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because there's still, like I talked about this some after the game yesterday, there's kind of been this split of 2 different groups. You've got one that just really wants Ken Walker III to get more opportunities, even though yesterday he had more carries, almost twice as many carries at one point, and he just wasn't as effective. And there's the other camp saying, look, we think Zack Charbonnet can get the job done, but we don't like how the Seahawks are using him. And I've argued about that with all the sweeps. They didn't do that yesterday. They got the between the tackle run game going. And it's just an example that there are going to be opponents where his style is going to be a better fit. And Houston did a really good job on the outside plays, perimeter plays, off tackle runs. They were shutting those down. But between the tackles, Zack Charbonnet had some success in this game, and it wasn't just in the red zone. So I think that's a really good point. And to me, when you look at this offense and this coaching staff, I think there's a lot of things to be excited about with what Clint Kubiak and above him, what Mike Macdonald are doing. But I think the clock management, that is still the work in progress for the staff. And I really quick, I want to revisit the end of that first half, because I even asked Mike Macdonald about this today, and he kind of smiled at me when I was asking about it, and he's just like, it's not good. Like, let's state the obvious here. That ending of the half, you have 3 timeouts. There were 57 seconds on the clock. They run a play, and then they let 20-plus seconds burn off the clock, and then they decide, oh, wait, we should maybe use one of our timeouts, and it was 3rd and 4. I don't understand. Like, I get the idea that you didn't want Houston to get the ball back, but like, eating that time there and not using a timeout ended up, to me, stalling out that drive some, and it put him in a difficult spot. I felt like you saw a example there where Houston ended up getting the ball back anyway, went down and got a field goal. I just didn't like the execution there. There were some issues in the fourth quarter with the way that they were running their offense. That drive they had down near the shadow of their goalpost, and they decided to try to throw it twice in those 3 downs instead of trying to chew up clock. That is where you should be leaning on your run game, especially with what happened to Darnold earlier on that strip sack. So I think when you're looking at clock management in those 4-minute offense situations, things of that nature, that is still where this coaching staff's got to figure things out a little bit more, because there were some rough stretches, and that helped Houston stay in this football game last night and make it closer than what it should have been. So I think Mike Macdonald would even tell you, he was acknowledging today, you don't want teams having a double dip like Houston did there, where they got the ball after halftime when they got that field goal late. Time management is something they have to continue working on. When we come back, we're going to shift gears to the defense here on Tell the Truth Tuesday. Some thoughts on a really good, dominant defensive effort, who stood out. More talk about some of the veterans and a few guys maybe we haven't had a chance to talk about that had a big imprint on the win over the Texans. That's coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The NFL season's now heading to week 8, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, such as how many touchdowns Sam Darnold will throw against the Commanders after their bye week, building a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets from any game in week 8, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more thrill to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined as always by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. Thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. The Seahawks snagging a 27-19 win over the Texans on Monday Night Football, improving to 5-2. We got a 3-way tie atop the NFC West. The 49ers would be the division winner as of right now, with wins over both the Rams and the Seahawks currently. But this is becoming a very competitive top of the division, and maybe the best division in the NFL right now when you consider 3 5-2 teams. Continuing our Tell the Truth Tuesday, let's go to the defensive side of the football. And obviously, Rob, there's going to be a lot more positives to talk about on that side of the ball with what the Seahawks were able to do to C.J. Stroud and company last night. Certainly a lot of encouraging developments, and we talked about Drake Thomas and Tayakata and some of these unheralded heroes, but I think you also have to look at some of the big dogs really showing up and scratching and clawing as a big reason they were able to defend every blade of grass and keep the Texans out of the end zone for most of the night.
Yeah, I think that before we even talk about the personnel, let's talk about the mastermind behind that defense, and that's Mike Macdonald. And I'm just going to kind of jump back to one of the things that you commented about before on the offense and the game management issues. It's one of the reasons why I feel confident that Seattle will be able to fix this, is because we have seen the halftime adjustments, and this is essentially the halfway point in the season. I think you're going to see some half-season adjustments here by Mike Macdonald as far as the coaching. I love the fact that Seattle has had the issues that they've had with health in the secondary, and yet Seattle has still been as effective as they were, with the one obvious exception, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Baker Mayfield just was unbelievable in that particular game. But as we talked about before, Corbin, with Tayakata getting the starting reps that he has had, with Tariq Woolen playing as up and down as he has played so far this season, for Seattle to continue to make the type of defensive adjustments as they have when they've needed to, their blitzes have become even more exotic. And that is because, again, I think that we're talking about one of the elite coaches in all of the NFL. I think that Mike Macdonald is proving that now, game in and game out. Yes, this team has talent, but it also has the scheme to match that talent. It reminds me a lot of how confident the Seahawks were playing early on in Pete Carroll's tenure. Buckle up, Seahawks fans. This is a quality coach with legitimate talent. We've been talking about it all the entire season and preseason, even off season. But now the rest of the NFL is going to start jumping on this bandwagon as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good stepping stone talking about the coaching job that McDonald is doing, getting his guys in a position to make plays. Ernest Jones was talking about this after the game last night, and he was also joking, like, after a game, it's a blur. I don't remember all the individual plays, where I was supposed to be, all that stuff. All I know is I was where I was supposed to be, and I made a play. But Mike Macdonald is putting players in position to have success. Leonard Williams talked about it as well, that there's a lot of times where they go back to the sideline and, you know what, we're going to give kudos to our coach because the play call that he made there. And understanding the method of madness and how he's attacking offenses with what he expects that they're doing. And we're seeing that play out with these star players having big games and really maximizing what they can do. So for me, I'm going to take the coin here with Ernest Jones real quick. I think that he is one of the most criminally underrated players in the National Football League. I said this last year after the Seahawks traded for him. I think he has been a top 10 linebacker for several years now. But we are seeing him transition now into that top 5 discussion, that top 3 discussion potentially. He's already got 3 interceptions this year, Rob. He has been dynamic in coverage, and that was the biggest issue coming out of South Carolina. Everybody knew he could go downhill and make plays against the run, that he could go sideline to sideline, make plays against the run, that he could blitz quarterbacks. But the coverage aspect, there were questions about that. And as he has gotten more experience and he has grown into this quality leader in the middle of Seattle's defense, he has excelled in coverage. And we've seen some ridiculous plays that he has made getting his hands on the football. The one that he had last night being no exception to that, with him falling down and managing to, while he's trying to get back up, just reach back out and grab that football and then have the wherewithal to realize I wasn't downed, get up and run and get extra yardage, and going after C.J. Stroud and forcing a backward pass that almost resulted in a touchdown or a safety. What a wild play that was. This guy was in the middle of everything. To me, he is absolutely at minimum a second-team All-Pro this year. I think he has put himself in the discussion, maybe even to be a first-teamer. He is right in that talk with guys like Fred Warner that have been the best of the best for a long time. He's playing at that level right now.
He certainly is making some very big plays for the Seahawks. And that's the thing, is that a year ago, Leonard Williams was making more big plays than he is right now. He's got 3 sacks so far this season. And so if you were to extrapolate that over the course of the year, he's probably not going to match the double-digit sacks that he had a season ago. And yet I would argue that he's actually being even more impactful. I would argue that the double-team blocks that he is absorbing is part of the reason why you are seeing Byron Murphy II create as many big plays as he is. And I don't mean any disrespect, certainly, to Seattle's young superstar defensive tackle Byron Murphy II. But Leonard Williams, as you just said, with Ernest Jones IV, that he's basically in the middle of everything. Leonard Williams literally is in the middle of everything. And I love, again, the creativity that we're seeing Mike Macdonald and by extension Adam Durde use to allow Leonard Williams to become that superstar. The fact that he is lining up on the interior, that they are asking him to rush the 2-point stance off the edge, that you were seeing wide receiver screens and zone blitzes where Leonard Williams, 6'5", 295 pounds of him, is racing laterally and downfield for yards, just showing the hustle of a former undrafted free agent, not as a former top 10 selection in the NFL draft. I said it before, and now apparently Dan Orlovsky and some of the other folks out there are starting to say it as well. This is a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate. And again, I think that you're going to start to see more and more people who are going to jump on Leonard Williams bandwagon and the Seahawks as a whole.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there. And it's another example that, your traditional stats don't always show how disruptive a player is. I can't tell you how many sacks that other players have made this year that resulted from Leonard Williams, either on stunts, doing his job, drawing multiple blockers, or just the fact that he's getting double teamed a lot. And he is still living in the backfield. He's still getting back there. It's not like he's getting stalled by these double teams. So he has been very productive. Another player that is continuing to impress here now that he's getting healthier, getting removed from that high ankle sprain that cost him 3 games. Nick Emanwari, you're starting to see the traits that we have gushed about. You're starting to see the playmaking ability that we have gushed about. The game is clearly slowing down for him, and we saw it in coverage yesterday. There was one particular play, he and Kobe Bryant working together in tag team. It was a crossing route over the middle, and it was outstanding awareness by Emanwari to come out of his drop and move to his left and get his hands on the football. Nearly had an interception, his first in the NFL. And it was just the instincts and the quick decision-making, the quick reaction. That's been missing a little bit for him early on because the game has been really fast for him, especially missing several games with that injury. But we got to see him do that. He had another pass breakup. He had a couple blitzes where he was in C.J. Stroud's face. And Mike Macdonald kind of hinted at today that, he might be our nickel guy here moving forward. That means Devin Witherspoon plays on the outside. What do you do with Reek Woolen, or what do you do with Josh Jobe? And it goes back to that good problem. We got to find a way to play all of our guys when everyone's healthy. But Emanwari is starting to play like the difference maker that we anticipated he was going to be. And I expect this is I don't even know if he's touched the surface yet as far as potential goes, because the game is slowing down and you could see some of the things going on, his communication improving back there. I am really excited to see this kid starting to live up to the hype that we had before that injury. Unfortunately, derailed the beginning of his season a little bit.
It did, but yeah, we are starting to see the light shining here. That is Nick Emanwari. I just love the physicality with which he supports the run, the instincts, the coverage skills that he is demonstrating at that nickel cornerback spot. I didn't think that he could play this well in coverage, lined up one-on-one in man coverage against the quick slot receivers for a guy of his 6'3", 230-pound frame. I mean, he is just truly showing what a remarkable athlete, instinctive football player that he is. So very excited about that. And I love the fact that you mentioned Reek Woolen and Josh Jobe and what might happen on the outside once Devin Witherspoon gets back, because I do think that is the most glorious problem that the Seahawks possibly could have. Look, Reek Woolen, I thought had a heck of a bounce back game coming off of the concussion, to have 2 pass breakups in this football game, a couple of tackles. He wasn't perfect, but still, again, Mike Macdonald kind of acknowledged that he thought that Reek Woolen had a strong week of practice. To see Woolen carry that into a game when Houston was desperate and they were throwing balls over the top, they very rarely challenged Reek Woolen. And when they did, it wasn't for a reception. And so, again, I think it just demonstrates what a talent that Reek Woolen is and what a terrific job the Seahawks coaching staff has been doing with him and as a whole across the entire team.
And I'd also be remiss not to mention the other play with Emanwari that really showed off his ability. Jalen Noel is a legitimate 4.39 40-yard dash guy. He's a speedster, and he was running down the seam. And Nick Emanwari at 6'4", 230. I mean, Noel's a tiny little guy. And Nick Emanwari was stride for stride with him, and it looked effortless, running with him downfield. And even if Stroud had that ball on target, if he had it on target, Emanwari might have picked it off. He was all over it. That just shows you the rare athleticism with his size and the coverage mobility, the fluid movement that he has. And now that he's getting fully healthy, you're seeing it all come together. So the secondary, a friendly reminder, this defense, a lot of it coming from the secondary, they had 12 pass breakups and an interception, 13 passes defensed on 49 pass attempts yesterday. They were getting, it felt like every single play they were getting their hands on the football. Emanwari, Reek Woolen both being a big part of that. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow for our Wednesday episode, we don't have a game to prepare for this week. We are going to take a little bit of a step back, and we're going to be talking about bye week awards and plenty of them that we're going to be dishing out. We'll get to that on tomorrow's show. Kind of a mid-season thing, even if it isn't quite the mid-season. We'll look at some awards and who's standing out for the Seattle Seahawks in 2025 so far. Make sure that you listen in and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Go Hawks.